And so, speaking of that record, Crisis is the third Alexisonfire record. It's recorded with Julius Butty again after the success of Watch Out, but they also have now some help from Nick Blagona, who produced plenty of 70s records. I was looking at his credits, and he's on fucking Bee Gees records, like all sorts, which brings a even higher kind of definition, value to this record. Released on August 22nd of 2006, still on Distort in Canada at this stage, but also now through Vagrant in the US, who had Dashboard Confessional, Alkaline Trio, Senses Fail, a bunch of bands who are, doing pretty well at this point in time. The album art depicts photographs from the Great Lakes blizzard of 1977, this huge snowstorm. The front cover is a man with, severely frostbitten hands, and they use that as a sort of like macro level of the album to kind of explore these different ideas of the crisis. I really like the kind of the sort of thematic kind of arc and through line of this album, what they do with it here. I feel like this is the first time where that really jumps out in a large degree.
Yeah, like not quite going full concept album with it, but having an idea, a thread that they can like weave throughout the whole album to give it a sort of consistent identity is nice.
Yeah, and to touch on the album cover, like I got into Alexis through songs on this, but for years I didn't buy this album because the album cover put me off so much.
I mean, I suppose it's upsetting. It's documentation, isn't it?
Yeah, I was like, yuck! I'm not buying that one. I'm going to buy Meteora by Linkin Park instead.
Yeah. And now you're a Dying Fetus fan. We all come on so far. This again, the thematic kind of consistency with it. You apply that to the how just the songs gel together on this. This one properly feels like a fucking record. Like it's funny that when you're listening to music in sequence, like we do for these band specials, the records take on new dimensions. Because like Crisis is the first Alexisonfire record that I really gelled with, because it's like the obvious one to get new people in, and it's a classic of the mid-noughties post-hardcore movement. But coming to it here, this record like takes on an astounding maturity in the context of its release. Like this record feels like it's taken the professionalism that they found on Watch Out as kind of its new foundation, its new sort of given, and then is so assured in going beyond that. It's like, okay, now we know how to make a record going in. We've got the best set of collaborators we ever have in terms of making us help make this record. We're not learning how to be a really great band for the first time. We already are a well-oiled unit at this point. And what we can do is make a genuine, like, artistic standpoint, statement from that standpoint. And, something I love about this record is it's a really big rock record. But it feels that quality that we've touched on a little bit more worn down than Watch Out does. Watch Out still feels charged by that youthful energy. Even when it goes pretty, it's like them kind of nailing that for the first time. Crisis, is it just me, or does this album have a different kind of mood to it?
Yeah, it's almost smoky and aged. There's a weariness to a lot of it, where even on songs where they do lean heavier, it's less like the excitable puppy and more like the old Doberman going out for one last hunt. Sort of feel, you know what I mean?
Like, I don't think you get that on Points of this album, but then it also kind of flips that with just being the most ludicrous kind of like post-hardcore hit factory at the same time.
Yeah, it is. It's the combination of those two. It's that perfect
balancing act between the two, which I think is, again, the secret kind of just like the secret sauce that they sprinkle over this album to just make it an all-timer.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting contradiction in that sense, because you can say what I've just said about it, and in terms of the previous records, it is true. But if you just had that as your only piece of information going in, you would be surprised by how fucking lively it is.
Yeah.
I guess it's just, this is the first record that really feels like they've lived a bit, Like, the idea of the crisis that explores, there's a lot on this that feels kind of out of step with its surroundings a little bit, like the world is moving past them a little bit, and then there's, the kind of through line of, like, homelessness and drug addiction and this kind of decaying urban malaise that exists within the walls of this album. They're not just having fun anymore, like they're really the willingness to explore territories even outside of the conventional sort of post-hardcore and emo they had been exploring. That idea they have of kind of serving the song. Here it's not just writing the best versions of the Watch Out type sound as they were there. It's going beyond that. And 2006, again, we're going to, by this point, the kind of like emo and post-hardcore, the band had been like on a cusp of a wave on in like 2002, 2004, where that generation of bands is sort of being handed the baton by what was, there before as some of the kind of most, interesting, zeitgeist defining stuff in rock music at that point in time. By 2006, that has like reached its commercial zenith. Like MCR are gearing up to release the Black Parade at this point in time. Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco even have like hit the big time with their previous records. Paramore have debuted at this point in time. It would only be a year or so before we get Riot. Alexisonfire's, again, very at the start of this special, we spoke about them being a big band, but never quite the like fucking, a million times platinum type band like some of those records would be. What do you think their general relationship is with like the mainstream giants of 2000 emo, as your like average person on the street might know them?
Well, again, they're too hard hitting to appeal to someone who could, pick up a Fall Out Boy or Panic at the Disco album. So I think they were never going to go truly mainstream at this point. They were always going to be in with a kind of like fan of heavier music, but they clearly showed that on this album. I mean, I think with this album, they are like, this album has better choruses than the bands whose whole deal was writing pop choruses of the emo movement. Like, that is, there is like an absurdity to this album that like, you take these choruses and they should be the biggest songs in the world, but because there is too much other challenges to throw in it, it can never quite be on that level.
Yeah, and when you compare it to the post-hardcore bands of their sort of specific era, Thursday they were still releasing great records. I love them.
They're on the down at this point, aren't they?
Most people...
Yeah, they're sort of the down. Yeah.
Most people don't like those Thursday albums. Thrice are maturing. They're doing their own thing. Funeral for a Friend.
They're slowing down and, yeah.
Funeral for a Friend are becoming an arena rock band. This sound isn't as hot as it was when Watch Out came out. But the fact that they are the one of those bands that still sounded like post-hardcore, that managed to hit like this, makes it even more impressive. When, like you say, the new thing is Fall Out Boy.
I think that's an interesting point. I was comparing it as almost like, obviously bands like Fall Out Boy and Paramore breaking so big brought a lot of, fresh faces of people looking for, this kind of music into that point. But you are right in terms of like, I'd have to think about this, but Crisis, you could make an argument for it being like the most successful, genuinely immediately recognizable as post-hardcore, as we knew it a few years before, record of this era. Like, it, in terms of bands who retained what that sound had been, but actually hit really fucking big with it and managed to make something that, again, it's not the Black Parade, but commercially could do numbers and could hang, and it didn't, go out of fashion or whatever. I think you make an interesting point about whether this record is some kind of island, or at least the particular most successful island example of a particular thing, and I guess that makes this record even more worth examining. And I think, while, again, like I was saying about the mood of this record, which is something that we're going to touch on a lot, I guess, I think you can certainly say, if there, like, a challenge has been laid down by, oh shit, you're a post-hardcore band, but now Panic at the Disco are, huge. Alexisonfire rise to the challenge on this in a way
easily.
In a way that you could say no, again, pure post-hardcore band of their era did. Because Crisis, again, it's not some kind of sellout album. It's still recognisable as what they are. But it represents Alexisonfire's sort of classic sound at its most confident and immediately convincing. Because it's not a huge departure sonically from the kind of melodic post-hardcore sound of Watch Out. But it is about as mass appeal ready as that sound could be without stepping over into being something that is more clean cut. And particularly, they seem to approach this album with the intent and the idea of writing bangers,
Yeah. I mean, that's it. Is taking the elements of Watch Uncoding and hyper focusing on like how can we turn that into hits without losing what we were. And I think the proof is just in this record of like how many of these songs are just like untouchable, massive bangers that still hit hard, and again like are melodically in terms of choruses as good as anything else going on at this point, if not better.
Yeah, I think, they never have that, like, Cork Tree, Black Parade, Bleed American, etc. level world-conquering smash. But, like, Crisis, about as close as they get, I guess, in terms of where it goes. And again, we're going to talk about all of the side projects and so on in the following part. But this is the first album after City in Colour had debuted, so I guess there are some more eyes brought in terms of like Dallas Green has kind of got this other thing that's doing quite well over there as well. But it brought more recognition there. And Sam, in terms of, like you say, the proof in terms of being in the pudding, this album is so good. Like, take this from me, right? The guy who is least likely to say that. This album is so good. This really is one of those cases of a band just firing on 10 in every element of what they do. The energy,
for every second of the album.
Energy, the urgency, combined with that sort of contradictory moodiness, like we said, the melodies. It's a really rewarding album to kind of get to grips with and fall in love with. Like, once you're a few listens deep and you know how each track is going to interact with the next one, like I said, a proper cohesive album, and fuck, that just goes like gangbusters throughout Crisis.
The sort of the side A of this one, because it almost kind of splits quite nicely into either sides of You Burn First. But that first 5-song run, utterly stupid levels of like every song of these could be the biggest song this band have ever written. Pick a favourite from that first 5 of it, like, is just unbelievably good. The way this album begins, like, no wasting time on this one. We are just straight in there with Drunks, Lovers, Sinners and Saints, just kicking off in the most like full-throated, belting out just that, all right, this is from us.
Well, I mean, Wade like, getting major representation from the start. You got to say, like, again, not necessarily the first voice you will hear on any given Alexisonfire record, but like major personality.
Technically, the second voice you hear on this one.
But like, that first verse is really
Wade.
Delivered by him, and he's more pronounced than ever. To me, like, this track isn't even one of the fucking best tracks on this record.
Oh, this is like mid-tier on this album, I'd argue, in terms of like if you had to break it into like the very
if you were doing one of those like magazine pieces like ranking the songs on a record, this is not fucking top end contender.
Top 3,
but the way like Wade and Dallas come together on that chorus, working together in the way they've learned. Dallas has been a standout for a good while, but Wade can really fucking sing on this thing in particular at this point in time. Like, his clean tone with that like kind of rusted quality he has, but the ability to still carry a melody. That chorus is such a great example, and it's so awesome that with this record they don't just have to. They've not done the thing of like, we're all just going to lean on Dallas now because he's the kind of the star. It makes what Dallas does a bit more special as well when he does do things. That's the thing about Alexisonfire and the 3 vocal dynamic that they really get right is when no one of them feels like they have an over-responsibility to carry everything, the distinct qualities of all of them can all shine through.
And I think that's what Crisis had. Like, over Watch Out is, I think it does almost shift a bit far towards Dallas at points. Like, it's almost like an overcorrection from the debut. This is where they get every single, like, that perfect recipe, all the ingredients perfectly balanced. Like, this is where they absolutely just get that. And again, like, Drunks, Lovers, Sinners and Saints, where you have got them all doing that bit on that chorus. Like, that chorus is so simple. And the fucking, like, final 2 minutes of the song is just that chorus on repeat again and again with slight little variations. Like, sometimes Wade will repeat the, yo, listen. Like, all things like that. But it's so good because that melody is so strong and they are all supporting each other to make it not get boring of just dragging out this one chorus. It's fucking glorious.
Yeah, it's such a high energy, like, mission statement of an opening track. And I like that for a lot of it, George only exists to scream all right every few seconds on it.
Yeah.
And I love after the first chorus when it drops out and then you just get that drum beat and like a super effects heavy guitar and it's really hype. It's like oh shit, you aren't going to believe what Dallas and Wade are about to spit. Like,
Yeah, the cohesiveness of this track list is just incredible. I know you were saying like the first 5 songs, but I think if you really hone in, the 3-track run of This Could Be Anywhere in the World, Mailbox Arson, and Boiled Frogs is just peak Alexisonfire. Like, throw a fucking dart at the track list of any like post-hardcore record from this era and find 3 songs together better than those ones. Like, that is as good as it gets.
I mean, I would honestly switch to the 5 songs. 'Cause I mean, I can't listen to Drunk Stuff, Cinders and Saints without it immediately going into This Could Be Anywhere. Because the way that ending drum thing seeks so perfectly into that, I have to go on that journey. But yeah, like, I honestly, the first half of this album, like, the whole album, to be honest, is glorious. But yeah, pick a favourite is silly.
yeah, you listen to the first track and you're like, fuck, this is a banger. I'm excited for the rest of this. And then that booming, like, barrel-shaking bass comes in. And this song is filled to the brim with drama, honey. This isn't your typical rock banger. This is epic. This is graceful, but still, like, there's something a bit unsettling about it. It's got a ghostly sort of haunted quality to the chorus, but that is a hook.
Yeah, I mean, the way the drums lead on that track, what we were saying, like the intricate drum grooves, like, that is their biggest song ever, like their accessible melodic peak. But it's ballsy the way they kind of, the first foot forward is this kind of rhythmically interesting, like if you were like, you know, in a DJ set or something, and that song hits, you have to kind of stop what you're doing and think about that beat for a moment. Like, it makes you readjust when it arrives.
It's even when you get the guitars come in and you kind of get that pause with the down before the verse kicks in. It's so off step. But again, that drum beat with the cymbals just crashing away is like, that is, again, make a drum beat iconic. And like, this is the song that has kind of transcended Alexisonfire, where I know people who love this song who don't like Alexisonfire because they've been to an emo club night and this song has got played and everyone knows that chorus. But again, this is one of those where you go like, try and break down every little thing about this song that makes it a world beater. And again, I kind of spaffed all over accidents. I'm going to just do it again on This Could Be Anywhere in the World, because it is just flawless post-hardcore songwriting. The trade-off on the verses between Dallas and George, the drama of that chorus, the drama of the bridge, like Dallas on the second verse, on the I Can't Believe This Is Where I Live, just chills again every time the way he delivers that line, the extra stank he puts on it, just like to really hit home. It's fucking outstanding.
The amount of space they give this song, I think, is one of the things where you can just put a pin in this and look back at everything we just spoken about and be like, look how much they have learned and look how far they have come. Because songs like, you know, again, the full on like melodic high energy post hardcore songs, they are clearly improved, finessed versions of what they were trying to do all along. But this is a galaxy away from where Alexisonfire started. And again, we've spoken about how it's great that they don't just go, hey Dallas, you're the star, and they really work out the 3 of them together. But when in that context you can give someone a star power moment, I don't. The reason this song is so, again, transcends Alexisonfire a little bit is there a more undeniable moment than Dallas in the chorus? The falsetto on the Haunted, it's like that's where you're like, all right, Mariah, like, you're a fucking like would-be R&B star. Like, that's the like goosebumps at that point. And still in that, I love Wade chiming in with the go-ohs. Like, it makes it hugely. But like, that vocal turn from Dallas on that is ultimately why he has become so celebrated.
Yeah, it is one of those just perfect vocal performances from a like alternative vocalist at that point.
Yeah, that falsetto might be my favourite part of the whole album. And it's a magic song in that it translates to me, 12 years old, watching Scuzz, and I loved this song in the same way I loved My Friends Over You, or The Middle, or Calling All Cars or something. But years and years later, I can revisit this song and appreciate it from a purely like intellectual standpoint. Like,
yeah,
oh, listen to what Jordan's doing. Whoa, Dallas is
Oh,
really...
definitely.
Like,
When we're talking about, again, the kind of emo club nights that Sam's just said, like, people would know the song from, absolutely this is one of the smartest songs that would be in that, like, in that collection that would be played in that order, you know?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And, like, I don't even know if you would call This Could Be Anywhere in the World a post-hardcore song, you know? Like, it's a big rock song, and it has class and intricacy and a special quality beyond just being radio fodder, but it is just all about kind of, you know, there is that little sort of arguably post-hardcore tapping like lead underneath it, but
so good though. It's so good, that lead on the verse. I love it.
I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying that that's almost one of the things that's recognisable from before. But it's all about, you know, an amazing piece of songwriting rather than conforming to specific genre tropes, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's taking all of these things and just kind of going, regardless of genre, post-hardcore, rock, whatever, we're just going to write the biggest possible song.
And I love that, again, those driving, gritty chords beneath the chorus still, which is what you need in a melodic rock song like that. And it helps Dallas fucking, you know, able to do his thing and not sound too, you know, weak or anything so much because, again, one of the key things that will appeal to people like me, you know, getting into a band like Alexisonfire is they never, even when Dallas is fucking doing his Mariah turn there, they never forget the grit, and that is so important.
Never sounds weedy. Never sounds weedy at any point. Like even again in at the end of the bridge where it goes full on quiet, Dallas just whispering.
That one little part of acoustic guitar, it's like 2 lines. It's not even a full run through of the chorus, and sonically, it's so perfect.
And it's so perfect. And then when George just comes back into the walk with like that change before that final chorus comes in, sounding bigger than it ever has, even though it's been massive the first 2 times round. That dynamic sort of sound is there, where they're not suffocating any of the sounds like they are on the debut. Everything is given so much space to breathe and just hit in the way it has to.
And it's a big like hit song that has a darkness to it and has an atmosphere to it, where it isn't a Foo Fighters song or something. It could only come from Alexisonfire. It could only come from a band who grew up listening to the Appleseed Cast or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I think
it's magical.
Absolutely. And I think, again, that sort of contradictory, the two sides of this album in that sense, I think it's sort of, you know, best defined by those attentions to detail, like we're saying, then bouncing into your mail's not safe in this town. Like what an insane thing to gang shout, you know? Right. Like that's going to embed itself in your head. What do you mean? What are you doing to my mail, you son of a bitch? Leave my mail alone. But you know, that is just so fucking rowdy.
And even then, you have honey-voiced Dallas Green telling you everything you loved is going to be burned away.
I was a smoke.
Yeah, I mean, I love in that, you know, the again, it chimes in with that concept of kind of being disenchanted with your surroundings. You know, you've sort of left it behind, or it's left you behind. Just sort of recognizing that, we know the this town is an mine, all that kind of part. And that, I think that song is definitely, that's post-hardcore with tightly wound little leads and everything. But they've gotten so good at like making all those things in the pocket at this point in time, where like their songs and verses now are like tightly compacted little bubbles and vessels of like melodies and ideas like that, and like that accidents effect we spoke about of like just opening up for a Dallas chorus that keeps a high energy momentum. I watched the smoke start to rise in that is like one of the best, and like Boiled Frogs is just continuing on that, like, again, a particularly amazing 3-song run that I was talking about. For me, again, Mailbox Arson is like a similar kind of level, but Boiled Frogs is the, you know, the what was chosen as like the upbeat rowdy single from this record, and holy shit, that's a song.
Oh, it's just so danceable, even by like the way that that lead guitar just sort of skips around,
and it's playful in a way a lot of this album isn't, because it has that the main riff itself is playful, but then after the first chorus it comes back with a hand clap, and again it does that thing I love where it'll drop out a little bit after the first chorus to be like, here he is, guys, Wade's about to fucking cannonball this, like Wade's about to spit some shit. This song is magical. Again, like the chorus really bursts in, and it's so bright and anthemic in a way that I don't know how this song works really, because like you said, well, I guess that's Alexisonfire in general. It's so many disparate parts that meld together to just create something special. And
Yeah,
that chorus is like, you could put that on a My Chemical Romance album and it wouldn't be out of place.
I mean, the riff, incredible. George, they do this, again, what you're kind of touching on there is they do this great thing in this song of, like, handing it through the vocalists, where, like, George takes a back seat on this record comparatively, for sure. The presence of Wade is rising alongside Dallas, having really done that on the previous record, but he gets to punch that first verse in, and he lights that torch of kind of passing it along the others. And, like, again, something that I'm really keen to point out is Dallas has this image, I think, of being like, oh, he's you know, the nice, pleasant one. He's the one in Alexisonfire that you would take home to your mum, whatever. The way he does I'm always missing the point. Every syllable is fucking pointed in what he does.
Yeah.
Like, driven into you like a dagger. You're like, Dallas has that fucking punk in him as well. And then you can see that in how they can give that exact same melody to Wade for the second go round. So when he hits that, like, My Youth Is Slipping on that same part.
Oh, I love that when Wade does that.
Yeah, it's a brilliant switch over from Dallas, but it's not like, oh, now that melody is, like, much more powerful than it had been before. It's just got a different tone to it while being delivered at the exact same fucking, like, punching.
Yeah.
It's got a mouthful of gravel to it this time with Wade doing it. Like, and again, it just sounds cool. And that's where that smoky, like, every time Wade comes in, that smoky, weathered, like, cool, like, just vibe is so all over it. And it is the handoff between vocalists on this album. It just blows my mind every time. I never get bored of it.
Yeah, because you, as an Alexisonfire fan, you love all three. I love all three guys almost equally. So every time there's a new part, I'm like, oh my god, it's George's bit, or oh my god, wait, here comes Wade, my bestie. Like, and even on Boiled Frogs, when Dallas does his verse with that melody, he still puts a little steez on it. He still does a little on the tail of some of the words. It isn't all spite. He can't help himself. He's just so velvety.
Yeah, and I do think, again, the lead part under the chorus, that does feel very specific to the era. Like, that little downwards kind of guitar part sounds exactly like something that would be on Hours by Funeral for a Friend. You know?
Yeah.
Like, so that. And then they even, like, that song, they fit in a whoa and then, like, a dramatic piano passage outro into the same song. Like, there's a lot going on there. And that sense of, like, you know, things going to shit around you. Like, the title track, obviously, Crisis, drawing, you know, inspiration from the natural disaster of the cover and a town being, like, snowed under. But that riff, that's a rock and roll riff. Like, that's in line with the kind of, like, raucous, angry, shit kicker punk rock and roll stuff that's going on. You know, yelling, "This town is going under" over it. Like, Alexisonfire are often a kind of emotively resonant band, but is this song them at their most, like, cool in, like, a kind of, you know, Bronx, Every Time I Die, Canterbats way cool?
Yeah.
You know what that riff?
Yeah, no.
That riff reminds me of New Noise by Refused, and even the way George interacts and screams over it. But you're right, it does have a rock and roll-y quality more than Refused do.
Yeah, it's maybe even, like, the first connection between, like, Wade McNeil and
Gallows.
something comparable to Gallows, isn't it? Like, I don't think
1977.
exactly. Like, I think George sings this line, but a blizzard coming in the year Punk died is so something you can envision on a Gallows record, right? And, like, you know, they say the rumbling bass, those repeated 1977s. It's got that brilliant balance of, like, lamenting some kind of loss and going ape shit about it that this record does.
Like, this again is one of my favorite songs in the album for just being that shit kicking punk and roll, like, rager that kind of captures the kind of the chaos of this storm. Little touch up, my favorite bit, like the pause before Wade comes back in with that 1977. Like, every time I'm just like, it's so good. Like, live where they drag out that pause to let Wade just go 1977. Like, again, it's another one of those songs that just has so many different pockets of just absolute brilliance.
Even though there is a melancholy to the chorus, the tail of it, Dallas has almost like a rock star cool smirkiness when he goes, "We've got a crisis." He sort of leans into it in quite a cool way, I think.
Yeah, I think that there's something, you know, with a song like Crisis and then that being the title track for the record, you know, it's something kind of apocalyptic about it. You know, I mean, like even like in We Are the End, it's like literally burning it all fucking clean away. But in, you know, the sort of slowly dying, ebbing away sense and raging against the dying of that light, I think is what you can probably epitomise this record being. But you know, the kind of the my youth is slipping away in Boiled Frogs, again, kind of that working class spirit on this record, and that sort of, you know, stuck in a shitty place, the
city is haunted.
Yeah, like I said, the Boiled Frogs metaphor becomes really powerful in that sense of, like, you know, someone being in the situation, not noticing something until it's too late to do anything about it. And then, as you say, Mark was touching on it earlier, this could be any in the world. That feeling in the song of, like, the streets are, you know, haunted and they are empty. Like, I don't know how much that song is inspired by economic decline or, you know, gentrification, whatever might be going on, but or if it's just sort of like growing up and leaving home and no longer recognizing a place. But that has this amazingly cinematic feel of, like, this broken, dying city, you know, the industrial decline. And that, again, for me, is one of the things that makes that song so much more my shit than just, oh, big chorus, you know. That is in there within Crisis as well, like, you know, the city being torn apart, the little focuses on, like, some of the people in that situation, like the junkie is trapped indoors, pretty soon he's going to need a fix, but the weather's not going to let him, and he's starting to get the itch, like the person into A Friend, with kind of the similar struggle going on there. Like, there's some brilliant stuff lyrically.
I mean, the counterpart to that is then you get, like, in terms of, like, the lyrical storytelling, you'll get a song like We Are the Sound, which is the kind of, like, just kind of like uprising against rebelling. This kind of like rebelling against the kind of the bleakness and finding the whole we don't belong but we're going to rally together. I mean, that again, I think that song is just fucking great in that raucous, rowdy punk verse where George is, like, again, almost like tripping over himself. He's got to go that's so fast.
Like George
on it, like,
representation of the album in terms of if you were missing it, you know, just constant. Even when Dallas takes over, does that really delicate vocal part. There's the little and sing along, and it's just kind of like it's there to, like, usher it all back in. Like the way you get, like, George screaming, echoing Dallas's cleans in the chorus, it's almost like a throwback to what they were trying to do on the first album, but it's such a more, like, controlled, well composed, older and wiser version. Like, those call and response parts feel
those soft-legged girls and half-faced boys, as Dallas, like, is doing that lovely melody.
They feel more deliberate than they've ever been to kind of engage, you know, an audience and get people. And obviously, like, you know, I mean, We Are the Sound, We Don't Belong is, like, as cut and dried and obvious, like, live, hey, everybody out there in the audience, this is about you sort of moment. What you were saying about the kind of rebellion of that, you got to remember the record starts with I won't ever change, not a jaded hair upon my head. You know, it's that kind of like, oh, fuck you, we're doing it anyway, even if the streets are haunted.
Yeah, like, that's the thing. It's the kind of, like, burst of life in the album that, again, it is like quite a bleak album, but when you get to that, like, that bridge where they go fully in on the We Are the Sound gang chant, with, again, I'm talking about, like, the drums being a step up here. The drum fill on this song is just such a, like, one of my favourite moments of that on that gang chant with the drum fill, where, again, if I'm seeing them live and they're playing this, I'm air drumming along to it. It's such a fun, like, moment within an album that like, is quite bleak, because then you go from this into You Burn First, where the mood change is so distinct, where you've had their most kind of, like, lively, upbeat, rousing, like, punk number into the darkest, kind of most worn down they've ever sounded. Genuinely,
like, threatening sounding after a song that has, like, a skate punk riff again, like, yeah, You Burn First is yucky, like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting turn, because it's a song where they entirely get a guest vocalist to do it, and it's one of their inspirations. It's one we talked about earlier. It's Garrett O'Donnell from Plain Mistakes for Stars sings that whole track, and that's why that, like, fucking, you know, throaty, rusty kind of thing is there. Like, it's not just Wade having, you know, smoked 20 cigarettes before recording that song. It's Garrett, and, like, I like Playing Mistaken for Lars. I like Playing Mistaken for Stars quite a lot. I think they're a good encapsulation of, like, a kind of thing Alexisonfire really lean into, which, as they go along, which is that kind of more rootsy, bluesy, sort of kind of whiskey soaked, you know, hardcore turned rock music. If you don't know their record Mercy, that came out the same year as this, if you're listening to this special, you probably like that record. You just need to go and hear it. And I feel like getting him as a guest spot, it's almost like a post-hardcore equivalent of when bands get someone from Neurosis It's like it's evoking that same kind of thing of like, you know, when Steve Von Till turns up on Axe to Fall, that kind of feel. Like it's so they get Gary to do a similar thing where it's so menacing, and the way he rasps that beginning, like he's awakening to life, and then offering some kind of like demonic challenge of "You burn first." It's really clever how they enlist him to get that effect, and then the band match him as well. Like the
well, it's the way they loop the song through twice.
Yeah,
like...
but I mean the ominous nature of the chords and that like rumbling tom part is completely new to them. That's like a dark blues song. That's not on Watch Out, you know. And the song is only 2.5 minutes long, but there's still a crescendo to it where they bring it to this like crashing, devastating point, and it's borderline like an interlude. And like you said, Sam, it's kind of the middle point that the other two album sides of it kind of move out of. But it's so momentous, and it completely changes how you are feeling at that point in the record. And that's just the kind of detail that you land on when you're in your purple patch. You know, when you're at the peak of your powers and you can pull shit like that. Yeah,
it's such a pivotal turning point for the record of taking the like just landing right in the middle of just having this moment of darkness that lets the kind of like that image of the crisis, the darker turn really sit with you, so that you kind of go, oh yeah, this isn't just a fun like big party post-hardcore record that's full of hits. There is a pain and a darkness at the center of it, and it is such a like striking kind of just turn when it comes in.
It's so sobering. And it's the only time where the band builds to something overwhelming and noisy in that way.
Yeah, I think you can hear in that this is a band just capable. Even with it being such a short song, and like the singer isn't even one of their singers. But you can hear in that this is a band who are capable of doing an awful lot more and exploring a lot more terrain than just like, hey, we're a 2000s emo post-hardcore type band. I would be so excited hearing that, knowing the future this band could go on to achieve, you know. And again, even like there's churning heaviness in other parts of these songs, like the screamed verses of "To a Friend," and the way the guitars like belch and fucking blow your stomach out at the start of that. And that is one of the like most desperate, saddest tracks on the record. But they combine that with a genuine kind of like musical distress instead of like, hey, we're emo, we've got some spoken word poetry on a fluttery guitar part. It's like, you know, I think that becomes one of Alexisonfire's greatest kind of assets and skills, the care they have for that balance.
It's one of the most like emotive and powerful choruses from Dallas on that one, where it is, again, that sort of like pop emo chorus that like so many bands would kill to have, and it feels so much more impactful in this because the verses are so heavy and there is such a sense of like pain and urgency that Dallas feels really like real the way he's singing that chorus.
Yeah, the way the song starts, it's so booming and loud, it like wakes you up almost. But that chorus is so bittersweet. There are elements of it that are so bright and lovely and beautiful, but it is pained and it's so like vulnerable and earnest. And that song that's one of my favorites here. It just makes me tear up.
It's really like, again, like a desperate, urgent in its kind of, you know, cry for help sort of song.
Yeah, and that's why I don't really agree with it's the first half and then the second half is different, because the second half still has some of the best choruses ever, like on this.
I think both halves are amazing.
I never said
you can just divide them between, with You Burn First kind of like acting as a dividing point between the two halves of the album.
Yeah, and like, you know, We Are the End has that sort of like clanging, harsh sound in the guitar. It's almost like that sort of that Western quality that I associate with something like Hang 'Em High from My Chemical Romance. You know, that little
that dusty Americana,
that like the snapping,
rolling drum beat,
the snapping snare rolls, that sort of train beat. There's even like a little disco beat in that kind of post-chorus, like after the first chorus in that track. And like the songs like that, they're really inventive, and how each one hits your ear differently with a different groove or feel, like I was saying about the interesting rhythmic ideas. But every one of them does have a vocal line that just slams into the fucking "Please tell me this is the end of the world" on that like rolling beat is a fucking barn burner, you know? And this record, it's just made for like punching your air through the songs for 40 straight minutes with You Burn First in the middle. You know, it's just like constantly driving you forward with melody and this sort of like nervous energy of this sort of, again, pent up frustration with all the things that are going on in this record. Like this, it is the Alexisonfire record that has that greatest hits quality to the track list. Like that sense of every song just being a fucking hit.
Oh yeah, and there's songs that you almost forget about when you listen back to it, and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, and you're singing along to "Love to Play the Victim."
Keep it on wax, man. Wade is just killing it on that
Oh,
one.
Oh yeah, I mean lyrically, it's a kiss off to the old drummer Jesse. Seemingly, I don't know if that's one of those things where like maybe they've made peace with it now, and it was just sort of born out of frustration in the moment. I don't know, but aside from "You Burn First," that's the least played song from this album on streaming, and yet to me,
That's one
again,
of the catchiest ones.
you could totally imagine that being released as a single.
Yeah.
On the strength of the song. Like, you would pop off for it live, absolutely. They just keep delivering again and again. I love the guitar lines in that. Like, the first riff, they've got the lead so on point, but there is that, like, fuller, sort of lower but warmer tone to them. That, again, it's less, like, high-end, stabbing you in your ears, post-hardcore quality, and just a really, like, classic, you know, North American rock and roll feel.
Yeah,
you know
there's
what I
a
mean? Like
smokiness to it.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love that sort of bluesy quality it has, even when it's like a fast banger like that. And what we were saying about Wade, like, so being able to sing properly in his own right, the times change and people change with them, it, like, sounds fucking incredible on that. I think this is the first record where you could go, yeah, like, I could imagine Wade completely fronting a band in his own right, you know, based on the performance on this record.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
And that's a song that sort of has two parts to the chorus. It has the Wade part and the Dallas part, and they both play to their strengths as individual singers, but they're both individually catchy. It's not like, oh, the Dallas part outshines the Wade part, because they work perfectly in tandem together. They're not a band who try to outshine each other.
And then Rough Hands at the end. Happiness by the Kilowatt. They had, like, landed a really stirring widescreen album closer. It could still genuinely be the front runner for the best album closer. Like, I know that, as you said, they always close with it and stuff like that in the live environment. But this is, after that, like, completely unlike anything they'd had prior. Like, this is, like I was saying, in terms of those steps away into larger territory. Like, this, I guess you could maybe call it an emo song, but it doesn't feel based in the tropes of, like, late 90s emo. The guitar lines definitely have that, like, Envy, Mogwai, like, sounds like something Svalbard would come out with today, those sort of, you know, the higher end guitar parts. But the bottom end of that song and the engine on it, to me it has more in common with, like, The Cure, honestly. Like, that weeping, somber bass line, the depressive piano. There's even, like, under the All My Bones Are Dust melody, there's a doom riff that legit fucking sounds like Paradise Lost. Like,
there is a dark gothic vibe.
Yeah, like, there's a Paradise Lost riff in this song.
It's wearier. It's more emotionally heavy. It feels like people who have given up, almost. Yeah,
the first time Alexisonfire lean into something like Doom, you know? And, like, incredibly, as considering what we were saying about that, George sings most of that song, you know? I think, obviously, you probably, if you think about that song, you probably think about the Dallas part and the chorus first of all, but they've got this, like, borderline goth song, and the screamy screamo guy manages to take command of most of it and not, like, stomp all over the grace of it. Imagine that 4 years before. It's, like, unthinkable.
Yeah. It's just when you can deliver the song, that the One Day My Hands Were Too Soft line, and you can actually feel the emotional weight of them, even when he's just screaming them. It's one where, even if, again, his scream hasn't changed massively, there's just something about his delivery where you can pick up the emotional clarity of it more than you could on the debut.
Yeah, I don't know how he manages to convey drama when he's not really doing anything that different than he's ever done.
Yeah, I think again, he's putting work in, but also the surroundings emphasize him more. And, like, to end the album, that sort of, like, emotional poignancy of, like, things turning to decay, the rough hands, my heart sealed with rust, all that kind of stuff. There is this amazing, wistful, haunted quality in this record for something that is at the same time their, like, okay, bangers, hits, go record. Like, that they managed to do those two things at the same time, I think, is one of the really special things about Crisis. Like, it's their most emotionally stirring thing they've done to this point, not in spite of being the most immediate, but in part, like, because of it. It's really strange and, again, contradictory.
That's what I mean. It should contradict itself. The two things should not go together, but it is something that just gives this album an extra edge that makes it more impactful, more memorable than what a lot of other kind of emo albums and post-hardcore, whatever, like pick any of the kind of alternative sphere of 2006 and what any of those bands are doing. And no one's quite landing on something like Alexisonfire are here. Thrice are, going darker with Vesu and stuff like that, but they're not being quite nearly as hit songwriting. So it feels like bands could either do one or the other, and Alexisonfire kind of go like, we'll just do both, like it's completely easy.
Yeah, it's lightning in a bottle. That's such a good point, comparing it to, like, I love City by the Light Divided by Thursday. It's when they really lean into the post-rock thing. But they're not writing on that record pop choruses like this.
Yeah.
It's when they leave all their contemporaries behind and just form their own path.
I think for me, that's kind of what makes this, like, for my taste, kind of the perfect post-hardcore record, It's immediate and catchy, and it has bangers and it has energy, but it was also dusty and heavy and gloomy, and it's such a compelling, like, actual package, this one. Like, it has a through line beyond anything they've done, and, again, this is why when we had that conversation on Watch Out about, like, minor or major classic, and we sort of said, like, well, Watch Out is, for that post-hardcore scene, a defining thing, but it doesn't necessarily... when you're talking about the giants of the 2000s, I think that is the factor that helped make this, the major classic in Alexisonfire's arsenal.
Yeah.
Like, this is, again, as a piece of work, thoroughly, it's a fucking album.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is perfect. As far as I'm concerned, this is a perfect record. It's a classic. It's
a 10.
It's a 10.
Like, this album is a 10 for me. Like, I don't think there's any kind of arguing on that one. Like, again, like, if you're talking genre, it's one of the, like, actual, like, all-time post-hardcore, like, monoliths that should be looked at in the same way as Relationship of Command is kind of, like, and revered in that kind of light. Like,
yeah, I think, like I said, it's sort of the first time Alexisonfire kind of punch beyond their immediate field and start, again, contending with just the sort of lay of the land at large. The best song on Crisis, because of what we were saying, I genuinely respect any choice on this. Like, it's one of those banger-thon albums.
This is the hardest pick for me, a favourite song. They're like, because, I mean, the title track for me of just being that shit kicker punk rager that just gets me so hyped. Boiled Frogs being that perfect distillation of writing a pop post-hardcore song that is so intricate and interesting. We Are the Sound having that just like raucous rallying punk thing that I'm always going to like. Any song that can hit those things, it's that cheat code to make me like a song where you can have any kind of really rallying, uplifting vibe. Mailbox Arson being like just ridiculous. I think though, like, again, going back to like, I listen to this album a lot, but going back to now and just really digging these songs, I was just sitting there thinking, like, when they finished writing This Could Be Anywhere in the World, do they think they go, we've written a perfect song here, and kind of just take stock of what they've done on that track? And again, it's one where you can just pick apart every little detail and say, like, that is special. And I think that's where you kind of like have to admit that's why that song has transcended, because it is genuinely special songwriting that few bands could even ever hope to replicate. So I think that's why I do, as much again as it might be the basic pick, there is a power that song possesses, which I just find just completely undeniable.
This is stupid, isn't it? This whole thing. I really, really was close to giving it to a friend, just because it makes me feel the most. And like I said, it makes me like, it gives me goosebumps when I think about that chorus. But I'm just going with, what's the chorus on this I like the most? It's Boiled Frogs. It's always been Boiled Frogs.
Boiled Frogs is amazing.
The second I heard this album in full, because at that time I was buying a lot of like albums from bands like this, and a lot of the time, I love Calling on Cars by Senses Fail, but it's absolutely the standout song on that album. Like, a lot of these albums have, okay, yeah, that's the big one.
Can't be saved.
That's good as well, but like, this album when I heard Boiled Frogs after hearing This Could Be Anywhere in the World, I was like, okay, I'm in safe hands. Like, this isn't just an album built off of one big single.
Yeah.
This has choruses for days, and Boiled Frogs is the one that sticks with me the most. And again, it's playful in a way that a lot of this album isn't.
Yeah, it's funny, going back to a Friend, the chorus in that song, like the really sensitive part, it really reminds me of Arms of Sorrow by Killswitch, which is like, I can, that makes sense why you like it so much. Yeah, I think, it's not as close to me, but I can totally see someone putting this in that, like, Sing the Sorrow, Three Cheers, Brand New Eyes, whatever kind of type category for just kind of like classic status, consistency. Like, genuinely, and I think it is, like we said, whether it's the heaviness or the slight artiness or whatever, the fact there's just kind of that sort of gloomy, rusted quality to it that stopped it being like, fucking Panic at the Disco big or whatever. But like, there are bigger albums from some of those more mainstream punk albums of this time that do not have track lists this stacked. Like,
they have better choruses than like I said, the bands who were told deals writing pop choruses.
Like, Fall Out Boy wish they had an album anywhere near this,
legitimately
this brilliant, and I like those Fall Out Boy records, but this,
Mark, you can't deny it.
This is just but so it's serious in terms of the track list, like we're saying. I think for me,
imagine Patrick Stump ruining a chorus like Boiled Frogs.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, I think to me, again, we touched on it a couple times. It's This Could Be Anywhere in the World is a moment, and I think that song is special in the way that I think that the reason that song is so much bigger than any other Alexisonfire song is you can play it to people who aren't particularly passionate about the niche that Alexisonfire come from, and they'll go, wow, that song's amazing. And it's borderline like, Everlong, no matter how you feel about the Foo Fighters, is just clearly a special song that everyone in the world likes. Or an sort of more micro scale, I think there's a similar quality. And for me, it is that haunted quality that we've said a couple times. It's like a big, beautiful, melodic song, but it feels haunted. It obviously inherently has a kind of a ghostliness. It's like it's being tailed by something ethereal or is walking through that kind of desolate landscape. And when you can infuse your like biggest ever single with that, I am gonna like love it and resonate with it so hard. The album is launched at a boat party on the River Thames, kicking off a world tour for this that would last 10 months in total. In London, they headlined Brixton Academy for the first time, which essentially means they have got to the level that they have been ever since, haven't they? They even produced 3 live albums from that tour, all from the UK. There's Live at Brixton Academy, Manchester Academy, and Birmingham Academy. It sells 20,000 copies in Canada in its first week, being certified platinum there in 2007, which means they are now firmly one of Canada's biggest rock bands. I believe Billy Talent 2 might have slightly outsold this, but they're just in that sort of league. Obviously, Nickelback some way ahead of them, but they have firmly entered. Essentially, the status that Alexisonfire have to this day is achieved on this album cycle, and as George would put it, we went to number 1 on the Canadian charts with a cover that depicts a man with hands deformed by frostbite and a guy whose sole station in the band is to shriek at the top of his lungs.